This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Let's pause and take a moment to talk about something very important. Life has its pressures for everyone, and we often carry the immense weight of expectation to never show weakness, to hide our true feelings, and believe that asking for support somehow makes us less of a person. But bottling things up isn't the answer. It can often lead to feeling down, burnout, or other unhealthy habits. We want to normalize the idea that it's okay to struggle. Real strength actually comes from opening up about what you are carrying and doing something about it so that you can be at your best for yourself and everyone in your life. If you're feeling the weight of the world, or even if things just feel a bit off, I can't stress enough the value of talking to someone. It could be a friend, a loved one, or a therapist. We here at This Week Explained believe that therapy can be incredibly valuable. Whether you've been in therapy personally or not, the broader benefits are clear. It's so helpful for learning positive coping skills, understanding how to set healthy boundaries, and it really empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it's so important to remember that therapy isn't just for those who've experienced combat or major trauma. It's a tool for anyone looking to improve their mental well-being and navigate life's challenges. That's why we're thrilled to talk about BetterHelp. With over 5,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it clearly resonates with users, boasting an App Store rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars based on over 1.7 million client reviews. It's also incredibly convenient. You can connect with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy schedule. And you can even switch therapists at any time if you feel it's not the right fit. And here's something special for our listeners. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp is offering our listeners 10% off their first month. What are you waiting for? Talk it out with BetterHelp. Once again, our listeners get 10% off their first month by going to betterhelp.com/thisweek. That's BetterHelp.com/thisweek. Tired of feeling overwhelmed by the headlines? Want to truly understand the why behind the global chaos? Then you are in the right place. Welcome to This Week Explained, your weekly deep dive into the most complex and impactful stories shaping our world. I'm Tiana, and joining me as always is Kervin. Before we jump into the crucial developments of the week, a quick favor. If you want to ensure you never miss an episode, make sure you're following or subscribed on your podcast platform. It literally takes 2 seconds and keeps you instantly updated. And if you are getting value from what we are doing here, a simple rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify helps us reach more curious minds like yours. And don't forget the new interactive comments on Spotify. It's a fantastic way to engage directly with the show and other listeners, extending the conversation beyond the broadcast. You can also find more fantastic podcasts like ours by visiting leonmedianetwork.com, part of the awesome Leon Media Network. This week, we're diving into the latest from Ukraine and Gaza, a burgeoning axis rising from the conflict in Ukraine, and what the heck is happening in Venezuela. So let's start, as always, with the war in Ukraine. This week, it seems like the political landscape around the conflict is shifting quite dramatically. So let us start with what appears to be a major policy reconsideration from the Trump administration. We've heard reports about the U.S. president considering supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. This feels like a rather stark change in approach. So what do we know about this potential move?
Yeah, you're right, Tiana. It is a very significant shift. It's also one that's caused a bit of garbled messaging, as we've seen. So you got Vice President Vance. He's confirmed that these conversations are ongoing, and President Trump is going to make a final determination. Now, the Tomahawk, by its very nature, is a long-range strike weapon that, if supplied, it would drastically improve Ukraine's capability to hit targets deep within Russian territory. This includes potential government buildings in Moscow.
Well, that would certainly elevate the stakes, would it not? I mean, we have also seen conflicting signals about whether Ukraine would be authorized to use such weapons for deep strikes.
Yeah, and that's where the garbled messaging comes in. So Trump's envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, he initially suggested that Ukraine would have authorization for deep strikes. Then he clarified his remarks. Now, as I said, the very purpose of these missiles is for long-range strikes. So this unclear messaging seems a bit off to me. What is clear, though, is that the discussion itself, whether it leads to a supply of these missiles or not, sends a strong message to Russia.
It is interesting that this comes after President Trump's recent success in brokering a peace deal between Israel and Hamas, which we will obviously discuss later. Yet he has described the Ukraine war as even harder to solve. He even met with President Putin in Alaska, which didn't result in a breakthrough.
Yeah, you make a crucial point there, Tiana. The Alaska meeting did not yield the desired results. If you listen to this podcast, you knew that's what was going to happen. But since then, Russian attacks have escalated. Moscow itself has stated that the prospects for a peace deal have largely vanished. And the Finnish president expressed confidence in Trump's ability to push through a deal, even though Russia is saying that there will be no peace deal. Now, the Finnish president is probably viewing the Gaza agreement as the precedent here, something that Trump could likely use in a Ukraine-Russia peace deal in the future. But the dynamics in Ukraine, I would say, are profoundly different than that conflict.
Speaking of escalation, we have seen an uptick in Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory, particularly in the Belgorod region. So what is the scope of these strikes?
Yeah, we certainly are seeing a consistent pattern of Ukrainian strikes, especially, as you mentioned, on Belgorod. Now, this has led to casualties and significant power outages in Russia. This is part of Ukraine's broader aerial campaign, which has intensified dramatically in recent months. They have been targeting Russian oil refineries, and they've been considerably successful in this.
Successful in what way? Are these attacks actually having a tangible effect?
I think they are. In reading reports, those reports are indicating that at certain points, up to 38% of Russia's refining capacity has been disabled. This has led to fuel shortages, also price increases within Russia. This is forcing them to increase expensive imports. They're even buying gasoline back from China at a markup after selling that crude oil at a discount. Ukraine is demonstrating that ingenuity can sometimes offset Russia's sheer might in certain situations. They're using low-cost drones to hit distant targets. Some of those targets are over 2,000 kilometers away.
So, a clear strategy to impact Russia's military and economy through fuel supply. Meanwhile, what is the current situation on the front lines? Russian forces claim to be making advances.
Yeah, that is what is being reported from pro-Russian sources. Russia claims to have seized several villages. They also maintain the strategic initiative in this conflict. Now, President Putin stated nearly 5,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory have been captured this year alone, though independent assessments place that figure a bit lower than the 5,000 square kilometers. But these gains have come at a very high cost in terms of personnel for Russia. Estimates based on recently leaked documents suggest that well over 250,000 Russian casualties have occurred in the first 8 months of this year.
Well, those are truly staggering numbers if they are accurate. And what about the air war over Ukraine? We've heard about continued Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure as winter approaches, which seems to be par for the course for them. Whenever you get closer to winter, they start attacking energy infrastructure.
Yeah, it's very consistent with what Russia's been doing over the last few years in this conflict. Each time winter has hit, Russian forces are persistently striking Ukrainian cities and critical infrastructure, both with drones and missiles. Now, they are again focusing on energy facilities because of the brutal winter months ahead. Now, we have also seen a concerning trend in another area. Analysts note a higher than usual rate of penetration by Russian ballistic missiles. Ukraine's interception rate for these difficult-to-stop weapons has actually dropped significantly. And that's either due to the conservation of those Patriot missiles that they use to intercept the ballistic missiles, or because Russia adapted its targeting strategies with these missiles.
For Ukraine, this is obviously a worrying development, especially with winter approaching. So, how is Ukraine countering these ongoing attacks and also planning for its own defense production?
Yeah, Ukraine is attempting to ramp up its domestic defense production, and that is by a significant margin. President Zelensky stated they are aiming for $20 billion this year. That's a tenfold increase since 2022. They're projecting $35 billion for drones and missiles for next year. But Zelensky is actively seeking Western investment in Ukraine's defense industry. He's offering reciprocal joint ventures. We saw that with the grain deal with the United States. We also saw it with the rare earths deal with the United States as well, with President Trump. This is a dual strategy. They want to strike externally to weaken Russia. They also want to build internally to strengthen their own capabilities because they know continued aggression from Russia is going to happen. Now, the issue with this increased defense spending would be what happens if Russia becomes successful in Ukraine and they take over most or all of Ukraine? Does Putin then have access to the drones and missiles bought and paid for by the NATO countries, to include the United States?
That sounds like a complex and rapidly evolving situation with both military and economic strategies in full swing. The potential supply of Tomahawks, the continued drone attacks on Russian infrastructure, and the high casualty rates all point to a protracted and intensifying conflict. And President Trump's role, whether through direct military aid or attempting to broker peace, remains a central question. So for now, I want to pivot to some good news from the week. After 2 years of devastating conflict, a cautious quiet has fallen over Gaza. An agreement has been reached. A ceasefire is in effect, and the first phase of a complex exchange of hostages and prisoners is underway. It is a moment many feared might never arrive. So let's start with the deal. How did this actually come together?
Yeah, look, it's this fascinating sequence of events that, in true Trump fashion, played out in real time to a live audience. I think we all saw the images of Marco Rubio passing a note to President Trump. And as Trump does, he, much like Ron Burgundy, will read whatever is put in front of him. And he announced to the world that we have a ceasefire agreement on live television. Now, while numerous parties were involved, the momentum appears to have shifted dramatically with the personal intervention of President Donald Trump. There was a critical turning point at a meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. It was there that he was reportedly convinced by his advisors, that includes Jared Kushner, which is his son-in-law, and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, to alter his approach on two fundamental issues.
Oh, yeah? So what were those two issues?
First was the idea of displacing Palestinians from Gaza. That was taken completely off the table. The United States just started. Yeah, I knew you would like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we can all get behind. Look, the Palestinians are living there. It's their home. It should be their home. I think as a society, as humans, we can shift from creating these wars like the one in Ukraine, where countries are trying to gain land and gain influence and power in order to control land and resources. Let's get away from that as a society, please. As Bill Burr would say, how is this legal? How is war legal? Let's start to make it illegal now. So, like I said, they took that off the table. They had kept it on the table since the start of the war because they believed Netanyahu would never go for it. But look, here we are with an agreement in place. And I think they've taken Netanyahu out of this as well. We'll probably get into that later in this podcast. Now, the second thing, and perhaps the most crucial point, was a strategic reversal. Initially, the thought was that planning for the, quote, day after, end quote. We talked about this, Tiana, on the podcast, right? If it's the IDF that's controlling the area,
Right.
Military is not to be used for that day after for peacekeeping, right?
Yeah.
need.
And they wanted to indefinitely kind of govern the area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So that's where this change came in. Who governs Gaza's post-conflict? That always complicated the hostage negotiations. The new thinking that was given to President Trump was that it was actually a precondition for success. If they could get a verifiable, neutral, peacekeeping force in Palestine, Gaza, for the Palestinians, Hamas might agree to it. So you had to solve the future governance question to actually end the fighting here.
So providing a political horizon was the key.
Yeah, precisely. It allowed Arab states to apply effective pressure on Hamas. They could now point to a tangible path toward potential statehood for the Palestinians. Now, at the same time, this framework required Hamas to step aside from future governance. This is what Israel had always asked for, that Hamas was no longer the governing body of Gaza. So it created a political off-ramp that did not previously exist.
But personal persuasion seems like only part of the story. There was also a significant breakdown in the relationship between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, was there not?
Yeah, like I said, I thought we would get into this today. And there was this sort of breakdown in their relationship. And it all stems from that unilateral Israeli airstrike in Doha. They performed that strike aimed at Hamas negotiators. It severely damaged trust, not just between Israel and Hamas. We've talked about the trust factors there, or Israel and the Arab states. We've talked about the lack of trust there, but the trust factors between Netanyahu and Trump. Trump was reportedly not consulted, and the fallout from that was significant. Netanyahu was forced to apologize, and in an extraordinary move, Trump issued an executive order declaring that a future attack on Qatar would be treated as an attack on the United States. This is much like Article 5 protections within NATO. This created a new dynamic. It demonstrated a willingness to apply immense pressure on Israel in a way that had not been seen by the United States previously.
So let's be real here. A combination of personal ego, strategic realignment, and diplomatic pressure. Now that the deal is in place, what is happening on the ground? The ceasefire is active, but it has to be incredibly fragile.
Right, yeah, we have had agreements in place before. We also all remember the ceasefire with Iran that was fraught with miscommunications and miscalculations, which could have derailed the agreement. As of right now, the Israeli Defense Forces have withdrawn to new agreed-upon lines that officially started a 72-hour clock for Hamas to release the first group of 48 hostages. Look, this is not a clean, sterile process. The withdrawal itself was conducted under fire. An Israeli soldier was killed by a sniper just hours before it began. On the other side, we saw reports of an Israeli strike on a school that was being used as a shelter right as the agreement went into place. Look, ceasefires are not light switches. They are more like slowly turning down a massive, chaotic machine. They are incredibly fragile. It's important to understand that there is always a lag between the high-level decision for a ceasefire and then the reality on the ground. Orders are going to have to travel. Units are still in combat posture. So hearing about these incidents right at the start is not automatically a breach. If anyone's thinking that someone has breached the ceasefire, is often the dangerous final echo of fighting as the command to stop the fighting makes its way to the front lines.
That reminds me of that movie 1917 where like the high in command made a decision and then sent a messenger to, run across France to get to whoever he needs to send the message to in order to stop a certain attack kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And obviously that brings us to the critical issue of verification. This ceasefire is ultimately an agreement between parties who profoundly distrust each other. And, it makes sense. So who acts as the neutral third party here? Like, who is on the ground to provide oversight and prevent this fragile peace from shattering at the first sign of trouble?
Yeah, and this is where the United States is going to step in, but with a specific limited footprint. So there's up to 200 U.S. troops already based in the Middle East. They are being moved to Israel. And it's crucial to note that they're going to Israel. They're not going into Gaza. The Central Command or CENTCOM commander released a statement clarifying that there will be 0 U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza. They are establishing what is being called a Joint Control Center, or JCC.
So they are building a coordination hub then?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a multinational task force. So you got the U.S. and Israel. You're going to see personnel from Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the UAE within Gaza. And their job is to monitor the ceasefire. That's first and foremost. They want to also coordinate the flow of humanitarian aid. They're also going to act as a communication channel between the two distrusting parties we have here, Israel and Hamas. They're going to report any violations to both sides through the Egyptian and Qatari mediators. Now, they are the overseers. They're not the enforcers on the ground.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. So let's talk about the challenges ahead, because they seem to be monumental. We have the immediate logistics of the exchange itself.
Yeah, and that is a huge challenge. The International Committee of the Red Cross has already warned that the scale and the speed of this exchange, all these hostages out within 72 hours, is an extremely tight time frame and far more complex than previous exchanges. So they are preparing for all scenarios, but the details are still sparse at this point.
Okay, well, beyond the logistics then, there is the fundamental issue of trust. Hamas has to release its primary leverage, which that's the hostages. So what assurances do they have that the second phase of this deal will even happen?
Well, look, that's a core risk for them, and it's the point of maximum danger for the entire agreement. They are handing over the hostages now, with the day after details still to be negotiated. Now, Hamas fears that once the hostages are free, Israel will have little incentive to fully withdraw or engage on plans for Gaza's future. I mean, I even saw one of Netanyahu's associates saying that there is no phase 2. I think that's a problem to be publicly saying that. But President Trump, on the other hand, is on record saying he has told Netanyahu that Israel cannot fight the world and that Gaza will be rebuilt. Now, the agreement hinges on whether the U.S. can, or if they will, continue to act as a guarantor or act as a guarantor and then enforce the second phase.
And amidst all of this high-level diplomacy, the humanitarian situation on the ground remains catastrophic.
Yeah, it does. It's still very catastrophic. We are hearing dire warnings from UNICEF that without all aid routes opening immediately, there could be a massive spike in child deaths. This is coming from acute malnutrition that we've seen over the last few months. That UNICEF warning is deeply troubling, and it brings up a fascinating strategic question about the narrative landscape here. So for the last few years, any humanitarian shortfall in Gaza has been laid at Israel's feet. But now we're entering a new phase, with the IDF disengaged and a multinational force composed largely of Arab states. They're going to be managing the aid corridors here. Hamas's information apparatus faces a challenge. If aid distribution falters, who do they point the finger at? How do they frame logistical failures or internal problems? How we do it on this podcast is point at both of the parties involved, Hamas and the IDF, for not doing enough for the people of Palestine or Gaza. But Hamas was always pointing the finger at Israel and promoting how Israel was not handling the aid situation properly. So that's always been the default, assign blame to Israel. Also assigned blame to the United States. In this case, the operational reality on the ground makes that a much more complex narrative to sell.
I'm sure they will find a way to blame someone else. But aside from the blame game, what is the next step on the diplomatic front?
Well, President Trump plans to convene a major summit in Egypt next week. Leaders from Europe, the Middle East, and Asia are expected to attend. Now, the most telling detail is who is not going to be there. That's Prime Minister Netanyahu. This signals a clear intent to build a broad international consensus on the path forward, with or without Israel's full cooperation at this stage.
It is also interesting to see how the different actors are positioning themselves for the future. Like Hamas, for instance, seems to be making its preferences known.
Yeah, very clearly. We saw a senior Hamas official praising Trump's role, while in the same breath stating that Tony Blair would be unwelcome in any post-war governance role, citing his history in Iraq and Afghanistan. If no one knows the history in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was Tony Blair, along with then U.S. President George W. Bush, that accepted troops.
Basically took your childhood from you or your youth?
Yeah.
Basically stripped you of your youth?
Yeah. Decided to send troops into Iraq and Afghanistan. I would put the blame on Osama bin Laden for the Afghanistan portion. We could argue about who's to blame for the Iraq portion. We won't argue about who's to blame for taking my early adulthood away from me, but that's a different podcast altogether.
Dr. Phil.
Yeah, it's a Dr. Phil podcast. But this is an early move by Hamas in the political chess game over who's going to have influence and legitimacy in a rebuilt Gaza.
It is a lot to process. A deal born from a unique convergence of pressure and politics, a ceasefire held together by a multinational observation team outside the wire, and future dependent on promises made between enemies who have no reason to trust one another. Now, it is time to shift our focus to a concept that feels like it is becoming more tangible every month. The idea that the major conflicts we see around the world are not as isolated as they may appear. We often talk about the war in Ukraine, for instance, in the context of Europe, but the information we are seeing suggests that it is the catalyst for something much larger. But first, we need to take a quick ad break, so please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, listeners. As we hinted at before the break, we were discussing how a war, like the one in Ukraine, is not an isolated conflict, but rather a catalyst for a broader strategic alignment among authoritarian states. So, Kerman, let's start there. When we talk about this larger picture and this new alignment, who are the central actors we need to be watching?
Well, Russia is, of course, a central actor, but it is heavily reliant on its partner. Or its partners. China is perhaps the most significant of those partners. That's because Beijing provides the industrial and technological backbone for the Russian military. Now we are seeing Moscow receive everything from machine tools as well as special chemicals for its military factories. They're also receiving advanced satellite data that helps guide those ballistic missiles that are used to strike Ukraine. It appears about 80% of the critical electronics in Russia's drones are now actually of Chinese origin.
This suggests a significant divergence between China's official stance of neutrality and its material actions.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. This is a strategic investment for China. They see the war in Ukraine as a battlefield that occupies as well as weakens the global West. This will allow China to advance their own global vision. Now, in return for their support, Russia is reportedly sharing advanced military technology with Beijing. This potentially accelerates China's airborne capabilities. Some analysts say it accelerates it by a decade or more. So they are learning from each other.
And then there's North Korea, which has become a surprisingly direct participant.
Yeah, Pyongyang has moved from a pariah state to one of Moscow's most important military partners. They are now supplying an estimated 40% of Russia's artillery needs. And more than that, as we've talked about on this podcast, they have sent troops, estimates suggest as many as 15,000, to fight on the front lines in Ukraine.
That is a stunning level of involvement. So what do they get out of it besides cash?
Yeah, they get something that I think is invaluable: modern combat experience. For decades, the North Korean army has been large, but it's been untested. Now, their soldiers are learning how to use drones, counter modern systems, and operate in small groups. They're taking those lessons back to their 1.3 million strong army, and in return, Moscow is helping them build advanced drones, similar to the Iranian Shahed models, and they've even reportedly provided a nuclear reactor to support their submarine development, as we talked about in a previous podcast.
You have also mentioned Iran. They have been a key player in the drone warfare aspect for a while now, right?
Yeah, they are the pioneers in the Axis in many ways. Iran helped Moscow build the initial factories to scale up drone production, but their influence is spreading. They've shared the same drone technology with Venezuela, more on that front later, but they are now the most advanced drone producer. Venezuela is the most advanced drone producer in Latin America. It shows how this proliferation works. A capability developed in the Middle East is now appearing in the Caribbean, posing a very different kind of regional threat.
So, if this axis is learning, adapting, and arming each other in a coordinated way, how is the United States and the West responding to this unified threat? It seems to demand a shift in strategic thinking.
It does, and we are seeing that happen in real time, that shift in strategic thinking that you mentioned. The focus now is moving to areas of the world that were, for a time, considered secondary. Now, the most prominent example of this is the U.S. state of Alaska.
Right. For many people, especially after the Cold War, Alaska faded from the strategic map. It was seen as remote, like a backwater.
Exactly. Yeah. For 30 years, leaders actually had to argue to keep federal investment in the military bases there. Now, Alaska is once again a priority. It is viewed not just as a staging ground to protect American power outward, but as a potential theater of conflict itself.
So, what makes it so critical now?
Well, I think it's the geography of Alaska. Alaska bridges two vital regions, the Arctic and the Indo-Pacific. So in any potential conflict with China over Taiwan, for example, the forward U.S. bases in places like Japan and Guam are extremely vulnerable to an initial wave of attacks. That makes the bases in Alaska and Hawaii, for that matter, the next best alternative to staging those forces. They would be the launch points for surviving bombers and jets coming from Guam and Japan.
Which, of course, would make those Alaskan bases a primary target for China.
Yeah, absolutely. And the U.S. military is preparing for that very reality. Recent large-scale military exercises held there were specifically reimagined to simulate a conflict taking place in Alaska. They practiced scenarios like building a backup port near Anchorage, assuming the main one was unavailable or destroyed. And the goal is to ensure they can both defend the homeland in Alaska and project power into the Pacific simultaneously.
Okay, well, we've talked about Russia, China, North Korea, and briefly Iran, but Iran, it's a key part of this axis, and that situation seems to be on knife's edge, so I want to get a little bit more detail about what Iran's part in this is.
Yeah, I think they're an incredibly volatile component of this entire picture. So back in June of this year, as we talked about on this podcast, tensions spiked dramatically after actual U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Tehran's response was unequivocal. They reserved all options to defend themselves. They warned of everlasting consequences.
So how does a direct flashpoint like that between the U.S. and Iran ripple through this broader alliance that we have been discussing?
Well, I think it raises the stakes for everyone. Iran is not just a regional power. As we've established, Iran is a key technology provider and partner to Russia. A direct conflict involving Iran, that's not going to happen in a vacuum. It would demand a response from its partners. That could create crises on multiple fronts. Russia could increase support. China could see it as another opportunity to bog down the U.S., and it would have immediate effects on global energy and shipping, especially with actors like the Houthis in Yemen. They are already receiving Russian satellite data in order to target ships, commercial ships within their region.
So, a new conflict in the Middle East could directly impact the strategic balance in the Pacific and in Europe. The world is far more interconnected than we might be comfortable admitting. The lessons learned on one side of the globe are being prepared for use on the other side of the globe. Defeating one actor is no longer just about that single actor. It is about stopping the spread of battlefield lessons to an entire network of regimes that see themselves in a shared struggle against the West. But for now, I want to shift to a country you briefly spoke about, Venezuela. So let us start with Venezuela's recent appeal to the United Nations. We saw them calling for an emergency session of the Security Council. So what was their core complaint, Kervin?
Well, Venezuela formally requested an emergency session of the UN Security Council, and their primary concern stemmed from recent U.S. military actions in the waters off of their coast. Caracas framed these actions as mounting threats from the United States, particularly after a series of military strikes on boats that American officials alleged were involved in drug trafficking.
And they did not just stop at reporting military actions, did they? They made some very direct accusations against the Trump administration's intentions.
Yeah, absolutely. Venezuela's letter addressed to Russia's UN ambassador explicitly accused the Trump administration of seeking to topple President Nicolas Maduro. They argued that these actions were threatening peace, security, and stability regionally and internationally. They went so far as to express an expectation of an armed attack against Venezuela in, quote, a very short time, end quote.
That is a very strong claim. So how did the United States respond to such an accusation at the UN meeting?
Well, the U.S. response was that President Trump resolves to use the, quote, full power of America and the full might of the United States to take on and eradicate these drug cartels, no matter where they are operating from, end quote. The U.S. maintained that these cartels are armed, well-organized, and violent, necessitating the use of force in self-defense and in the defense of others. It's important to note that the U.S. views this as a, quote, non-international armed conflict, end quote, with the cartels. It's consistent with the right to self-defense under the UN Charter.
So, a clear difference in framing the issue then. Venezuela sees it as a threat to sovereignty, and the U.S. frames it as an anti-drug operation. But there's been more going on behind the scenes, has there not? Specifically, some rather extraordinary diplomatic overtures from Venezuela.
Yeah, this is where the narrative becomes even more complex. While publicly defiant, Venezuelan officials, with President Maduro's blessing, were reportedly engaged in months-long discussions with the Trump administration. They offered a dominant stake in Venezuela's vast oil and mineral wealth.
A dominant stake? That sounds like a significant concession. So what exactly was on the table?
Yeah, you're right. This was a far-reaching offer, Tiana. Under this proposed deal, Maduro's government was prepared to open up all existing and future oil and gold projects to American companies. They would also grant preferential contracts to American businesses and reverse the flow of Venezuelan oil exports from China to the United States. They'd also significantly reduce its energy and mining contracts with Chinese, Iranian, and Russian firms.
Well, I mean, that would be a complete reorientation of their economic allegiances. Given these extensive concessions, why did the Trump administration ultimately reject the offer and cut off diplomacy?
Well, despite progress on economic issues, the negotiations reportedly failed to reach an agreement on President Maduro's political future. Maduro's foreign minister explicitly stated that Maduro would not negotiate his exit from leadership. This appears to have been a crucial sticking point for Venezuela and the United States. There's also strong opposition within the Trump administration, particularly from figures like Marco Rubio, who consistently advocated for Maduro's removal and was skeptical of a diplomatic approach.
So even with the immense economic incentives, the political component was non-negotiable for both sides. We also know that the U.S. has maintained a strong stance against Maduro's legitimacy, even offering a significant bounty for his arrest.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The U.S. does not recognize Maduro or his government. They label him a narco-terrorist. It's an accusation Maduro and his government vehemently deny. This fundamental disagreement on legitimacy certainly complicates any diplomatic resolution.
It is interesting how this all unfolded just hours before Maria Corina Machado, a Venezuelan political opposition leader, was awarded the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. That must have added another layer to the geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. Even as the government was making these desperate attempts at rapprochement with the United States, an opposition leader was primed for a Nobel Peace Prize. It further highlights the deeply fractured political situation within Venezuela itself.
We also heard about an alternative economic proposal being pitched in Washington by Miss Machado's movement. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so while the U.S. was negotiating with Maduro's envoys, Ms. Machado's movement was presenting its own economic proposal in Washington, D.C. They argued that a democratic transition could unlock even greater wealth for the U.S. companies in Venezuela, projecting $1.7 trillion in 15 years. Her economic advisor emphasized that Maduro's offers of investment would not materialize without democracy, rule of law, and individual freedoms. They called his offers, quote unquote, or quote, control maintained through terror, end quote.
So, a clear distinction between the stability offered by an authoritarian regime versus the stability promised by a democratic transition, each with their own appeal to foreign investors. This really shows the competing visions for Venezuela's future. So, as we wrap up, Kervin, what do you see as the overall takeaway from these developments?
I believe the key takeaway is the multifaceted nature of this conflict. Neither the U.S. focus on drug trafficking nor Venezuela's claim of a regime change plot fully explains the entirety of the conflict. The reality is a complex mix of both. It's fueled by economic desperation, an internal power struggle, and the geopolitical ambitions of Russia and China regarding Venezuela's resources.
A very insightful overview, as always, Kervin. It is a situation that continues to evolve, and we will certainly be keeping a close eye on it. Is there anything else you want to discuss, like the super cool 2 weeks that we just had?
We're back.
Thank you. Yeah, we're back. Did you miss us? Thank you for being patient while we took a break from everything and hung out. We finally got to hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fantastic time. We forgot a lot of what was going on, or forgot about a lot of what was going on.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be completely honest. I did not keep up with the news at all the entire time I'm not going to say we were off grid. We weren't off grid. We were just unplugged, pretty much.
Yes, definitely. We were present and available with each other and the kids. And so that was really nice.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been cool if I didn't get sick while you were here and then sick after you left. Like, I was out of command. I still don't know what it was, but I blame it on, there was this kid that like open mouth sneezed on me in Amsterdam. And I'm pretty sure he gave me whatever he had. Because I sneezed so much with whatever it was. I would sneeze 8 to 10 times back to back so hard that I had tears coming out of my eyes by the time I was done. But anyways, yeah, we kind of hopped continents. Me and our friend flew to Germany, and we hung out with Kervin for a week, and then Kervin came back with us and hung out for a week, and now we're back to this. We're back to this.
Back to this. For now.
Germany is awesome. I had never been there before, and I loved it so much. It was wonderful. I can see why my uncle packed up and moved there 30 years ago. Like, I totally get why he moved there. It was wonderful. I loved it. 10 out of 10. We'll be back again. So
I mean, as soon as we landed and got into DC traffic, I was reminded why I left.
It's true.
You saw that in real time.
Oh my gosh, you were driving crazy. You were you were annoyed at the traffic, and because I was in the back seat whenever you were driving, because I'm the shortest person, obviously, so I sat in the back. Um, but because I couldn't see the road, it was giving me motion sickness. So I was like snapping at you for every little Batman maneuver that you were making, and you were like, I hate the traffic. The traffic is garbage here for sure. Worst in the nation, I believe.
Some would say. Some
No,
would.
it was voted. I'm
Oh,
pretty
okay.
sure you're like the top of the poll of worst area to drive in the United States of America. So congratulations to us in the DMV. It's
We
great.
didn't hop in a vehicle once in Germany because
Nope, we didn't need to. And it was
we got
great.
transit. It was
Yep.
it was glorious.
It was. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have a ways to go before I'll be able to navigate that. It looked confusing as heck to me.
No, that's only because you let me take control and guide us around. If you had to, you would have figured it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But
Well, you're gonna have
anyway,
to.
yeah. Well, that's fine with me. That's fine. But also, yeah, just the food. I know I don't know if I talked about the pints of mashed potatoes. We didn't go get the pints of mashed potatoes this time, but I did get the best baked potato of my life.
Reminiscent of your love of Cajun potato.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if anyone's been to
Stuffed
Cajun.
baked potato.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone's been to Cajun potato in Houma, Louisiana, but oh my gosh, I would go there all the time. But this potato was, I don't even know. It was just my favorite thing that I've had in a really long time, and I miss it, and I'm really sad, and I wish I could have more of the cheesy spatzel that came with it. I don't know. I don't know. We just had a great time, and I can't wait to go back. Can't wait to go back. And yeah. Oh yeah, and also happy 17th birthday to our baby. Our baby is 17 today.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yes, we are old enough to have a 17-year-old.
We have a 21-year-old, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that a lot when I tell people, you're not old enough for that.
And you're like, surprise. We just popped him out. We popped him out back to back.
I had always thought of that. Like, either there's two ways to start a family. You either do it really early so that then you can have fun, in your 40s or 50s, or you wait and you have all of your fun in your 20s, and then the rest of your life is that's no fun.
It's fun. We had fun even as we had kids, though, because I mean, we traveled a lot and went out a lot and I just got a notification on my laptop that Columbus Day is tomorrow.
It is, and I will be celebrating.
My people's favorite holiday. We love
the company
Columbus.
that I work for, which will remain nameless in this podcast. They do not celebrate this day.
They don't? Congrats to them. That makes me like them even more.
Yep.
Hmm.
So they actually give an extra day for the 4th of July to celebrate even more for America's birthday.
So they give you the 5th of July off?
Yeah.
Nice. So you really do have to go into work tomorrow?
No. I'm taking it off. No one's going to be there tomorrow.
Oh.
No.
Okay. Well, anyways, yeah, we had a great time together, and I miss that dude a whole lot. He can come back anytime, and I want to go back anytime. And yeah. Let's talk about bar.
Okay. And now, so we have definitely gotten off of the geopolitical portion of the.
Oh yeah.
And we are on to bar.
We're on to bar. That's my new favorite place in the whole world. It's this bar that doesn't have any clear hours of operation. It's called Bar Bara, I think.
Yeah, it is.
We just call it bar because it's bar with exclamation points. And it is a local joint, not flashy. It reminds us of the type of bars that we go to in South, like when we're in our hometowns, locally run, not very flashy, but very hometown feel. And I don't know, I just loved the vibe in there. It wasn't pretentious. It was basic cocktails and beers in bottles, and
Yeah, we didn't have a cocktail, did we?
no, we didn't. We just stuck to beer. But also one of the bartenders who was wearing a very sparkly outfit. I think it was required that all the bartenders wear sparkly skirts and stuff. I don't know. But they were wearing very sparkly outfits, and she brought us 3 shots, and I wish I knew what she was saying because obviously she was speaking German, and she rattled off a bunch of stuff to us, and then she said Prost, and so we took a shot with her. I don't know what it was, but
we survived it.
We survived it, whatever it was, and we were just like, I don't know. I just felt like we were being welcomed into the neighborhood kind of thing. It was really, really enjoyable. I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed every part of the trip. And our friend Ryan, one of the best travel companions we've had, because some people have very clear ideas on what they want to do. And they have like a detailed list of all the things, and they have the times that they want to accomplish it. And we just decided on a whim what we were going to do, and it was
we decided the day that moment we woke up, what are we doing today?
Yeah, basically. And it was nice to have somebody so chill and relaxed and just going with the flow, which we appreciate, because we are the kind of people that like to just kind of wander around outside of the touristy areas. And I mean, we'll go do things, but
we did Volksfest.
Yeah, we did go to Volksfest. I mean, I didn't participate for long in Volksfest because
you and me both, sister.
Yeah, we left Volksfest a little early, but it I don't know. It was just fun. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about bar because bar was great.
And as you said, it's opened when it's open.
It's open when it's open. We don't know when it's actually open. It was just luck that it was open.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know if this little tangent flows all that well, but
I don't think tangents need to flow. I just think they are tangents.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, happy birthday to our child.
Happy birthday. Which I told her happy birthday at 7 a.m., which was like 1 a.m. for her. She was still awake. She texted me when I woke up and said, "It's my birthday."
So you wished her happy birthday after she texted you or before?
Yes.
Which one?
After she texted me, because I had just woke up.
Your yes came in after I said, did you text her before or after? And then you were like, yes.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
2 things can be true at the same time.
No, this can't. No, not in this situation. No. So which one was it?
It was after she said it.
Oh, that's cute that she texted you. It's my birthday. We're going to get crab.
Yes, my birthday.
We're going to get crab today because she wants crab. She couldn't think of anything that she wanted. And I was like, we don't have to stay in this area. We can go into the district. We can go to Annandale. We can go to, wherever you want to go. Springfield, whatever you want to do. We don't have to stay here. And then she was like, crab, which I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I mentioned it already, but she already cashed in her birthday gift, which was a trip to New York City to see her favorite play of all time and her favorite stage actor make his Broadway debut. And, we had like 4 or 5 days in New York City just hanging out one-on-one time. saw plays every single day we were there, ate food. Yeah, so she already cashed in her birthday present, but today we're going to go dinner and celebrate that little nugget baby. So
It's going to be fun for you.
Yeah, it will be nice because...
Well, for her, it'll be fun.
Yeah. And then I'm sure she'll, whenever she goes hang out with her second family later on this week, they'll probably
hang out with them.
Yeah.
Those people.
Yeah, her adopted grandma will probably give her a block of cheese and she'll come back
Nice.
with cheese.
I love it.
17 years old, and that child still requests cheese for her birthday. Ever since she could speak, she asked for cheese for her birthday. So here we go. Just keeping with tradition.
Yes.
All right. Let's shut up. We've jibber jabbered enough. Yacked our little heads off.
Giving the people what they want.
Giving the people what they want. But anyway, so
yes.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
As we wrap it up? Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening to This Week Explained. We hope that you found it both informative and engaging. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. So for more in-depth coverage of these stories and more, be sure to follow us on social media at This Week Explained.
Tiana, thank you so much. And until next week, stay safe out there.